Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the This Week in Movies podcast. For those of you who don't know, I do an introduction at the beginning of every show wherein I talk about the podcast in and of itself and a few other developments on my channel. You can look at the various time codes on your screen currently and skip ahead to anything you might be interested in. Well, for those of you who don't know, the This Week in Movies podcast, this is in fact the fifth episode, as I might have already mentioned, and I'm enjoying doing this, to be honest. It's a really great way of talking about all the bits of news that I don't feel the need to make individual videos about because they might not be such spectacular things about news or whatnot, and frankly I get to converse in a far more casual conversation. Everything on the This Week in Movies podcast is unedited, so it's a great way to promote conversation. It's unscripted, and frankly it's just my input on everything going on in the world of film for the past week. And there are a few shout outs that I definitely wanted to give. And the first is to Stuffed Burrito ENT. He's in fact a great reviewer. I've checked out his channel before. Got in touch with him about a week or so ago. He's on We Live Film as well. He's a fantastic reviewer. Check out Stuffed Burrito ENT. Another reviewer you should check out is Roll Credits. Now, the exact link to the channel is a little more complicated than just that, but type in Roll Credits and click on the option channel. The very first result you get. She's a great reviewer. She's extremely talented. She's got about 111 subscribers, and she definitely does a great job. And one more person I want to give a shout out to is definitely a great fan who's been commenting a lot, and I'm so happy to interact with him. And he left the absolute loveliest comment on last week's episode. He says, "You are seriously talented. If all this is unscripted, you are one of the better live podcasters I've heard. I almost get as much interesting information here than at AMC Movie News. Keep up the good work." And this comes from Janoy Vinder Lanson. And frankly, I love him. He's been, commenting a lot. He's extremely supportive of the channel, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Now, the channel in and of itself, I've hit about 557 subscribers. It was 558 till about 5 minutes before I started recording this, and someone either backed out or some account got closed, but I can't determine which one it is, of course. But really, I'm glad that so many people have stuck around for so long. It really does make me happy. I want to try and get to 600 subscribers soon. I do have targets for the end of the year that might be a tidbit unrealistic, but I hope to reach higher heights, and I'd love if you could do the following. One, just, share this video with your friends, and two, post a question below. A lot of people there has been one question that I'll get to later on in this episode, but a lot of people haven't been posting questions as I might have expected yet, and post questions about anything in the world of film, past, present, or future. I'd be happy to answer them in next week's episode. Now, let's delve in to some of the news. And before we do that, the last thing I just wanted to say was that there are a lot of films I still have to review, a lot from 2014. I finally reviewed 40 films in all from the year 2014, which is pretty amazing, and I want to try and see 100 films by the end of the year and review them. That's a daunting task. I have a lot to catch up on, a lot to see in the remainder of the year, of course, and apart from that, there are a few older films that I have to catch up on. I haven't managed to see 22 Jump Street. I've been meaning to review 21 Jump Street as well. I'm looking forward to at least watching the original Transformers trilogy, even though I don't particularly like those films. Don't know if I'll be able to review them, but I also want to review The Fault in Our Stars and Memento to continue my Road to Interstellar series. Now let's get on with some of the news. The first bit of news that we have is about DC, and I made a separate video for this. In fact, I'm going to leave a link in the description below, but we apparently have their slate for the cinematic universe. It was sort of revealed by NikkiFink.com and has now been confirmed, in fact, just very recently by DC themselves. And the slate is pretty interesting for what some are describing as the DC cinematic universe, and we, of course, know that we have Man of Steel in 2013, which happened, and then the next film's coming out May 6, 2016, up against Captain America 3, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, a film that I've said a lot about a film that I'm still a tidbit skeptical about because of the very fact that I was not a big fan of Man of Steel, as I keep mentioning, but I know that there are people out there who really enjoyed it. It was extremely just, well, I don't want to get into it. I really did not like the film at all. So my skepticism comes about from the fact that we have similar people helming the project, like Zack Snyder, and I think David S. Goyer is back on the project as well. But, I'm excited to see what Ben Affleck could bring to the character of Batman. I'm excited to see what Jesse Eisenberg and Jeremy Irons can bring to their respective characters of Lex Luthor and Alfred Pennyworth. So, I think we've been getting quite a bit of buzz on this film, and we have to realize one thing. This film is still 2 years away. So we're about a year away from a teaser trailer. So the amount of news that we're getting is pretty spectacular at this point in time. But really, it's the later films that, upon thinking, upon talking about and uploading a video, and upon really just, introspecting on, I've realized that it's pretty damn ambitious. I use this word a lot in that video, and in July 2016, they want to have a Shazam movie, and in Christmas 2016, they want to have a Sandman movie. Now, with DC, considering the fact that all of their properties are under the very belt of Warner Brothers, to start off with these two characters, because in the past, all right, we've had multiple iterations of Batman, multiple iterations of Superman. We know, even certain general audiences know about Batman and Superman, but this really is a bit of a jump in the sense that it's not a safe decision, which is an interesting thing to see because I got the impression that around Man of Steel there were too many safe decisions, and now they're just going for everything but safe decisions. But really, the way I see it is that it's not the heroes I expected them to just introduce immediately after Batman and Superman, but their seemingly complicated origins and whatnot definitely make it seem like they need a film before the Justice League, which is in fact coming out in May 2017. May 2017 is the Justice League film, and it doesn't feel like the build-up for that film might be as spectacular as it could have been, because we're going to have 4 films before that, as we know, 3 of which are coming out in the previous year, and 1 of which is Batman v Superman, and frankly speaking, that to some people is already coming across like a Justice League film with the introduction of Wonder Woman, with Cyborg, with the possibility of Aquaman, which I'll just get to in a moment. So, to be honest, I don't know if the hype might be at the level that DC is hoping for, but at the end of the day, people are going to watch the Justice League and perhaps love it if it is, of course, a great film. And then we have a Wonder Woman film in July 2017, which is good news because, Wonder Woman as a character is something I've always been interested on seeing in terms of, a cinematic expression or a cinematic presentation of her character, if you will. Something I've always been intrigued by and something I've always certainly looked forward to. And a lot of people have that argument that, female superheroes aren't really, at the forefront. And I guess it's not a bad thing to have a Wonder Woman film to really propagate that idea. And it'll probably pay off if, of course, it's a good film once again. But we're going to get an introduction to her in Batman v Superman. We're going to get a little bit more of an introduction to her in the Justice League. And I hope that the original Wonder Woman film can be in some form, dare I use the word definitive, in the sense that, the origin and everything is set up really well, and it's actually more delved into in the original film in and of itself. Considering, the first ever Wonder Woman film and whatnot, why not aim for the stars? I hope it's just not, and the other adventures of Wonder Woman and just one particular incident and one particular villain. I hope that there is a great amount of detail that they deliver in terms of her origin, in terms of the kind of person that she is, in terms of her character. Of course, assuming that she doesn't have the largest role in either Batman v Superman or the Justice League. And in December 2017, around Christmas time, there's a team-up film. And this team-up film, to me, the moment I read it and just thought about it, it sounds so amazing. So cool and just amazing, because the two characters are so young and roguelike, and they're going to be introduced newly, I'm guessing. That's the Green Lantern and the Flash. I mean, first things first, their powers are vastly different, which is pretty awesome. I mean, there's so much scope then in terms of the film now. While I don't think they're going to be linking the Flash to their upcoming TV series, and I don't think they're going to be linking the Green Lantern to the Ryan Reynolds 2011 film because that wasn't particularly well received and it wasn't a massive box office success, I still think that riding off the Justice League, the Flash and Green Lantern, who you have to realize aren't as popular as maybe even Wonder Woman is, for all you know. Wonder Woman is probably more well-known, or at least that term Wonder Woman is certainly more well-known than something like, Green Lantern, or even Shazam and Sandman for that matter. Of course, they don't hold a candle yet to Batman and Superman, but really though, conceptually it's interesting. Now, in the right hands, it could potentially be a fantastic film. We know nothing about it for me to go in any further to talk about it. But at the end of the day, it's an idea that I like, and I hope it's well executed. And finally, the Man of Steel sequel is coming out in May 2018. And it's interesting because recent news suggests that the Avengers 3 is probably going to be releasing the same month. And original plans for The Amazing Spider-Man 4 were around 2018 as well. We're not sure of the month, May or July, but, with some later Amazing Spider-Man news, you'll know why that's not possible. Anyway, so the Man of Steel sequel is something that people have been looking forward to, well, since Man of Steel. Me, again, not so much. I'm still extremely skeptical about it, but it's interesting that they have to wait 5 years and 6 films before they can get to Man of Steel 2. I mean, a lot of people thought that Batman v Superman was going to be Man of Steel 2, and a lot of people were speculating about that. That's not the case, obviously, and I think while, of course, the character of Superman will develop through Batman v Superman and the Justice League, it would still be interesting to see if they manage to tether it to the original film. Again, a film I didn't like, but speaking on the behalf of someone who did, they might want it to tether to the original film in the sense that there's a solid continuation of the arc, but of the arc of Superman as a character, of course, and maybe, I'm sure Lois Lane will be in Batman v Superman. So the continuation of all those little story elements throughout this universe is going to certainly be interesting in terms of their execution, and something I'm certainly looking forward to. Now, there is a bit of other news. As I mentioned earlier about Aquaman, rumor has it that Jason Momoa is going to be playing Aquaman. Now, this is certainly unconfirmed, and it's a rumor that's been going around for a while, and Jason Momoa, a lot of people like him as an actor, and a lot of people wanted him, or at least he was offered the role for Drax the Destroyer in Guardians of the Galaxy. Speculation has that he left because he wanted to be Aquaman, but really, I think that, again, I don't know an awful lot about the Aquaman character, but in terms of the look, it's interesting. He does have that look in terms of, he can really represent the King of the Sea. At the same time, Aquaman is a character, as you know, that is made fun of a tidbit. All right, it's just a fact. Even for those who love him, they understand that Aquaman is not the prime member of the Justice League and has got his fair share of flack in the past. But getting someone like Jason Momoa may be able to, reinvigorate that sort of essence of respect that the character has, and I think that the character certainly deserves. Furthermore, there has been some news with regards to the shooting of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. There are a lot of things that have been revealed from a image perspective. One is that there is a Superman statue to feature in the film. While this is certainly not major news, it just seems like it seems like an interesting and very natural progression, considering the fact that you have this hero that will be worshipped by some, although feared by a lot as well, but worshipped by some. So a statue of him in a film, sure. And furthermore, there were some sightings of LexCorp buildings on logos and stuff like that. So it's just a way of getting excited for some people to know that it's really underway. The next bit of news, well, it's a little more than just a bit once again. It's about DreamWorks Animation, and frankly, I had no idea I'd be taking 10 minutes to talk about all of the DC stuff after already doing a 10-minute video on it. But DreamWorks Animation has also sort of revealed their slate for everything post 2015, that is 2016, 17, and going up to 2018, which is pretty spectacular. It's daring, and I gotta say that it seems pretty awesome, to be honest. All right, so of course we're gonna have Kung Fu Panda 3 towards the end of next year. We're gonna have The Penguins of Madagascar towards the end of this year, if I'm not mistaken. A film that I'm certainly looking forward to. I enjoyed the trailer a lot, but some of the films that they have coming up are pretty interesting. In particular, one or two that I really want to talk about. So on the 18th of March 2016, we're going to be having a film called Boss Baby. I have no idea about with regards to anything about this film, unfortunately. Not a lot of information has been revealed, so unfortunately I can't really comment. The film that I can comment on is coming out June 17, 2016. That is How to Train Your Dragon 3. I just saw and reviewed How to Train Your Dragon 2. I really enjoyed it. I had my issues with it, and I'm not 100% sure I can say it matches up to the first one, though they're still very much in the same league. I am still certainly going to look forward to a sequel because so far, with Don DeBlois on the first two films, he's done a great job. He's been signed up for the third one already. And frankly speaking, the work that has been done on these films, there's this essence of maturity and emotion and sense of adventure that really appeals to me in these animated films. And I think that the How to Train Your Dragon series so far has been fantastic. So How to Train Your Dragon 3, I want to see where they go now. I want to try and comment without spoiling How to Train Your Dragon 2. But in terms of the arc of Hiccup, which has been at the focus of the first film in terms of him kind of going from a boy to a man, and in the second film to a certain extent, but him sort of embracing himself and the confidence that he possesses and trying to become more of a leader, it's interesting to see where the third film will actually put our main character, because the prime focus of the How to Train Your Dragon series has been on Hiccup, something that I really, really love. Furthermore, on November 4, 2016, there is a film called Trolls, based off the Troll dolls that we know of, and that in particular is really just, I hate to use this combination of words, but Hollywood just milking everything possible. Like, do we need a Troll Dolls movie? It's something that I'm gonna find hard. I have difficulty commenting on. I'm sure there were people in the past who said, "Do we need a Lego movie?" Despite the fact that Lego is a far bigger brand. And well, look at me, considering the fact that the Lego movie is one of the best films of the year so far, and at least in my personal opinion. But really, the Trolls movie, we don't know anything about it. As a concept, I can comment on the very idea of a Trolls movie. And I mean, sure, there's going to be a lot of added fiction because they don't have a whole lot of lore or mythos within their universe to really create a large, entertaining feature-length film out of. So they're going to have to create their own spin. You're going to need very, people with inventive, quick, and interesting ideas, maybe even like Phil Lord and Chris Miller, to undertake something like this. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing where they go, but for the current situation of things, a Trolls movie is not particularly exciting to me, unless, they have an interesting spin on it. Now, the next film on their slate, there's an interesting aspect and a slightly disappointing aspect about it. The disappointing aspect is that it comes out in January, and I hate to say this once again. Most people, while there are certain fantastic films like, let's say, The Grey, that have released in January, and yeah, they're just setting this release date way, way in the past. It's not like they're shoving it to January last minute, because people know that January doesn't particularly have the best of films as a month. So from that perspective, I'm not 100% excited, but anyway, that's a very minor thing because it's a Captain Underpants movie, and it's one of the few franchises that I've thought to myself, I want to see a movie on that. I want to see an animated film, and I want to see it happen. Let's be honest, okay? If there are two franchises I've ever thought about, one, I mean, of course, Captain Underpants. I've read most of the books. I really enjoy the kind of, at least as a kid, I did enjoy. It's been a while since I visited it, but from what I remember, there was an edge and this slick essence of humor about it. Really different, really inventive, and certainly something that gets me excited. But at the same time, I want to see where they go with it, and I really hope that they manage to, get the right kind of people behind it, and capture that essence of the tra la la kind of thing at the end of it. That kind of beauty melted in with humor is something that I'm really looking forward to seeing in a Captain Underpants film, and something that I'm definitely going to watch, something that even hearing about gets me excited. And of course, as I was saying, Captain Underpants was one of the franchises. The other franchise I'd love to see be made into a movie is Crash Bandicoot. Not happening in the current situation of things, unfortunately. Nonetheless, there are a few more films that DreamWorks has announced. Now, on March 10th, 2017, they intend on releasing something called Mumbai Musical. And I don't know, there isn't an awful lot of information on this, although this release date has been up for a while. So I'm pretty sure, a lot of animated films, people tend to underestimate them in terms of their quality, of course, and frankly, they can really capture a vast essence of emotion, but really, they go into production so early on. The technology, the effort that is put into these films is commendable, and that's one thing I'm really happy about, because DreamWorks is putting in about 3 films a year in terms of animation. That's more than Pixar. Pixar doesn't have any films this year, to be honest, which is unfortunate. Even though they've got 2 next year, they probably got 1 for the following year. And yes, Pixar, I mean, while relatively they're a tidbit smaller, plus Disney has a lot of other things to focus on, still, DreamWorks getting away with 3 animated films a year consistently is going to probably really push them forward in terms of the animation game. And on November 3rd, 2017, we have The Croods 2. The Croods was a box office success, garnering over $500 million, and is a sequel necessary? Not particularly, although I have not seen the sequel, but I have, done my research, communicated with people, and the necessity of the sequel, of course, stems, by the current situation of things, stems more so from the fact that it was a box office success, not more so from the fact that, like, let's say a 21 Jump Street, wherein 22 Jump Street was inevitable because of 21 Jump Street and the events that occur. So, in that sense, I don't get the impression that The Croods 2 has to happen, but, again, commenting on all these films, there's something so in common that I can simply say, in the right hands, they'll be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. I don't want to ramble on, but with films coming out 3 years from now, it's difficult to comment on certain things, but blah, blah, blah. I'm looking forward to them. Hope they're well executed, yada, yada, yada. You get what I'm saying, right? Now, Feb 16th, 2018. We've got 2018, which also has 3 films, by the way. There's a film called Larrikins. There's no information on Larrikins so far. Can't say anything about it. But on May 18th, 2018, there's a film that is really going to do well. I believe it will. Now, it's Madagascar 4. The first Madagascar film, spectacular. It really introduced a lot of characters and things that a lot of people have related with, and that have stuck with people for a while. And the third film came out just about a year ago. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as I might have hoped. Still a fun film on the whole, though there were a lot of things that they could have easily done with it. But what I'm looking forward to is seeing how the Penguins of Madagascar plays out, because the trailer alone of that film, it looks so incredibly intelligent. Incredibly intelligent. And I hope that Madagascar 4 tries to revert back to more so their essence of humor, wherein, there were so many little things about the original Madagascar film. Really, I mean, whether it's them singing New York, New York, to Melvin doing something as silly as he does in a, let's say, public lavatory. I mean, still brought about intelligently. It's Madagascar was such an adventure, and I felt that lately, let's say Madagascar 3, sure it was fun, but was it anywhere near as good as it could have been? The film didn't feel cleaned up. That's the problem, that there were issues so visible, and it that was one of the prime issues I had with Madagascar 3. The issues were there. You could have easily extracted them and really had a slightly more refined image or motion picture. Unfortunately, it didn't feel like they went that route, and I hope that Madagascar 4 does learn from some of the mistakes of the franchise. They're not glaring mistakes, to say the least, and I hope that the Penguins of Madagascar really gives us an insight into the kind of humor to expect in Madagascar 4. And finally, we have Puss in Boots 2, 9 Lives and 40 Thieves, coming out November 2nd, 2018. And this film is, of course, once again, coming off the box office success of Puss in Boots. Shrek had 4 films. The first 2 were great. The third and the fourth didn't appeal to a lot of people. They had a bit of a spin-off with Puss in Boots, which a lot of people enjoyed. In fact, it was nominated for an Academy Award. Came out in 2011, so 7 years for the sequel is a long time, considering the fact that the Shrek franchise, you'd expect like a Shrek film in the middle if the franchise as a whole were still running. 7 years is a long time. It really is. But at the same time, Puss in Boots is such a fantastic character. 9 Lives and 40 Thieves, that subtitle to me brings about this beautiful essence, throwing back to, things like Zorro, things like certain films like Desperado. Just the way the title jumps across to me, it blends in the 9 Lives of the Cat and 40 Thieves, maybe of Alibaba for all we know. And certainly something that sounds interesting, and I'm looking forward to the synopsis of that film. And all in all, though, that's what DreamWorks has planned from now till 2018, and I can certainly say that they're really, really upping their game. The next bit of news, the next segment of news, which has a lot of stories within it, is about Star Wars. They're all minor stories, to be honest, which is why Star Wars is not featured or headlined as it has been in the past weeks. First off, the Boba Fett spin-off is to be written by Lawrence Kasdan. Now, this is once again a tidbit of a rumor. I don't think that any of the spin-offs have officially been confirmed just as yet, but recent reports state that Lawrence Kasdan, who's already working on Star Wars Episode 7, is going to be working on the Boba Fett spin-off, which of course implies that Gareth Edwards will not be doing the Boba Fett spin-off, an angle that a lot of people don't seem to have looked at, to be honest. And then you assume Josh Trank's going to do it, because we know he's the only other director, and you assume that the Boba Fett spin-off is not coming out in 2016. It's coming out years later, 2017, 18, depending on the release of Episode 8. But one thing, yes, the Boba Fett spin-off, if it's true, awesome. Initially I was very skeptical, but just after hearing a lot of different fans just talking about where they'd like to see it go, the excitement behind it has really got me going. Although I'm still not fully sold on the very idea of spin-offs, to be honest. At the end of the day, having Lawrence Kasdan write it, it's interesting because of the fact that my initial expectation in terms of what they'd be doing with regards to writers and people working on these films is that you'd have a slightly different set of people working on the main saga, Episode 7, 8, 9, and a slightly different set of people working on each of their respective standalones, of course overlooked by the same producer, Kathleen Kennedy and whatnot. But I think, to kind of improve on consistency in terms of the main saga, which I still hope is the focus, that Disney doesn't get a bit too carried away with these spin-offs, that once again I'm not particularly fond of the idea of Justice yet, but I could be sold if the film's great, of course. I just hope that their focus and their heart is in the right place when it comes to this, and I was really thinking that they'd have, let's say, Lawrence Kasdan write Episode 7, Episode 8, Episode 9. Have different writers do the spin-offs. Really, emphasize the consistency that they want to have in this saga and in the upcoming trilogy and in the upcoming films. Now, the next bit of news that we have with regards to Star Wars is that Simon Pegg was spotted on set. He was, of course, he made a statement earlier saying that he would not want to be a part of it, moving from Star Trek to Star Wars. It might not be the most intelligent of decisions, but at the same time, there are rumors that he's been spotted on set. Now, whether it's a minor cameo, for example, in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Anthony and Joe Russo brought in their frequent collaborator, Danny Pudi from Community, who plays Abed, to have a short little cameo. Maybe Simon Pegg has a similar cameo, or maybe he's just visiting set for all we know. I mean, it's these little tidbits of news that I like to talk about, but I tend to get the impression sometimes that they get a bit overblown in terms of their implications and in terms of the kind of things people perceive. People are now jumping to the conclusion that he has a main role or he's going to play this person or that person. It's a little much, especially without an official confirmation, to really reach that point. Now, there was a Star Wars Underworld TV show that was in production with regards to younger Han Solo and Boba Fett. It's been scrapped, and I'm not surprised. I don't think Star Wars, apart from maybe the Clone Wars, is really fit for TV because the production value in live action is going to be so high that it might not be the best idea to have it on TV. And finally, this is a bit of unfortunate Star Wars news, to be honest. Harrison Ford has been injured on the set of Star Wars Episode 7, and it says he's going to be out for close to 8 weeks. Now, 8 weeks is a lot. I mean, we know some small films that finish shooting in 8 weeks. Granted, Star Wars is going to probably take a lot more time. Still, I hope that, sure, they're going for the same release date. They're going for a lot of things, but I'm a little worried in the sense that this may cause a few delays for them. I'm literally worried for them. I still think that they have an ample amount of time in post-production to really execute the film the way that they should. But, it's unfortunate that someone's been injured. And honestly, I hope he has an absolutely speedy recovery because of the fact that, he could potentially play a large part in this film. So has been rumored in the recent past. The next bit of news is with regards to The Amazing Spider-Man, both 2 and 3. First, I'm going to talk about The Amazing Spider-Man 3. The sequel has been postponed to 2017, and this is not particularly surprising to me. Sony had, well, at least the way I felt initially, set some pretty interesting and quick deadlines for themselves. The Amazing Spider-Man was a big success in 2012, so they decided to greenlight the sequel, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, to come out in May 2014, and then they wanted 2016, The Amazing Spider-Man 3, 2018, probably a Sinister Six film or The Amazing Spider-Man 4, and, just keep going every 2 years to keep going on. Taking a step back is not a bad idea. This news to me is absolutely positive because of the fact that if I look at The Amazing Spider-Man 2, while there were certain moments wherein I felt that the film was a bit rushed and there were a lot of elements that could have been fixed, sure, I still felt that, of course people have issues with studio influence and stuff like that, and the marketing, and there were a lot of things that weren't going for the film, despite the fact that on the whole I still somehow enjoyed it because it had a lot to say. The Amazing Spider-Man 3, I like a film when it takes its time. And there's two sides to that. Let's say Jupiter Ascending gets postponed 2 months before release, as it has. That's not a good sign. It shows that there's either a lack of faith in the project, or that they're gonna have to rush through a lot of things. Maybe that they don't want to, but still, at the end of the day, that it's still not finished. Like, there's a lot of work going on in it, which is good, but maybe they're not able to find their niche with regards to the film. But when it's postponed at a situation wherein we are still years from its release, not technically a bad sign. They've anticipated this, of course. They are aware of the fact that the film will take longer than they had expected earlier on. I want to see where they go in the film, of course, because, I'm a big fan of the franchise. The first Amazing Spider-Man film was absolutely fantastic. And I think that this is not a bad idea on Sony's part. I have been a tidbit, apprehensive with regards to some of Sony's more recent actions in terms of their approach towards their own cinematic universe, but taking a step back in this case is literally taking a step forward. Let's be honest. And another bit of news that we have, it's a small bit of news with regards to the Amazing Spider-Man, that is that Shailene Woodley commented on the fact that she had been cut from the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, for those of you who do not know, she was in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 to play Mary Jane Watson, a very famous character in the Spider-Man franchise, but they cut her role out entirely. She said she was disappointed. At first, she was wondering what she had done. Later on, she realized, she kind of dusted off her shoulder and went on with her life and realized that things like this happen. And she seems to have taken it quite well. She has a lot going for her. The Fault in Our Stars is supposed to be a highly acclaimed film. She has the Divergent series going on as well, which is supposed to be really good. And I mean, of course, I'm looking forward to the future installments, though I didn't particularly love the first Divergent film. Still, though, being cut entirely from a film is not a good thing, and I don't know for what reason it was done, but I get the impression that from a story-based perspective, less so than from a performance-based perspective, that it had to be cut. So the possibility of seeing Mary Jane Watson being portrayed by Shailene Woodley in the future still exists. The likelihood is a tidbit less, though, of course. And there's just one little thing I wanted to add to that, I had this idea. I'd love to see Emma Stone play Mary Jane. Now listen up. Before you go on to say Emma Stone was Gwen Stacy, how will she play Mary Jane? There's some kind of an arc that they could really go for in this film of how Peter is so crushed by this loss that he, from a love perspective, he starts to feel lonely. He's lost out so much in his life. He's caused this. He goes into depression. And in order to overcome that, he tries to find a woman who's very similar to, let's say, Gwen Stacy, the woman that he loved, who supported him and cared for him. And maybe towards the end of the film, he turns around, and for the first time, he gets to see Mary Jane, he sees Mary Jane early in the film, let's say, but for the first time, he sees Mary Jane, except now looking like Gwen Stacy, thus being portrayed by Emma Stone. Really adding to a pretty interesting arc, in my personal opinion, if executed right, of course. It's definitely a different take, and it's just my own theory. It's just my own little, fantasy land that I kind of live in, and I really hope that they do go down that route because it's going to be new. It's going to be something pretty daring and something that could potentially pay off for the better. The next story we have is about The Interview, and I have to say that The Interview is a film that I can't wait for. I saw the trailer, and my God, Seth Rogen and James Franco are going to be playing two interviewers who go to, at first, interview Kim Jong-un, but then there's a plot to assassinate him. They're hired to assassinate Kim Jong-un. And considering the current political turmoil and whatnot that has just been experienced, that I don't want to really get into, it's a daring move. It's a very daring move to undertake a film like this with this kind of content. And there's one moment wherein they talk about how, let's say, Kim Jong-un has convinced his people that he can speak to dolphins and that he doesn't defecate or something. And to tackle one side of what we believe to be absolutely ridiculous, it's so interesting. It's so fascinating. The film is fascinating to me, to say the least. It is a gutsy step. This could potentially be a film that doesn't get released because of some political tension. It looks like it's going that direction, and my God, who better than Seth Rogen and James Franco to really undertake that kind of material. Now, the next story we have is also, in fact, about Seth Rogen and James Franco. They're undertaking a film called The Disaster Artist. In this film, it really chronicles the making of the cult film The Room, which has been so heavily disliked by people. It's become a cult film. Like, it's a film that, it's so bad it's good. Like, it's at that level. And I mean, there's a film coming out about this, and there's this one particular man. If you haven't seen The Room, you should watch it. And I'm not sure, okay, there's Seth Rogen in the film, of course, and along with him is James Franco. James Franco is going to be playing Tommy Wiseau. And for those of you who haven't seen Tommy Wiseau, he's a pretty interesting man. But James Franco, in my personal opinion, is one of the most talented actors we have today. If you saw his role in Spring Breakers last year, I have absolute faith that Tommy Wiseau would be, something that he would easily be able to execute in the most perfect manner. But the news about the film, The Disaster Artist, which of course chronicles the making of The Room, is that Dave Franco is being cast in the film. Dave Franco, James Franco's brother, and he's going to be playing a man called Greg Sestero, Greg Sestero was in fact one of Tommy Wiseau's friends. So Dave Franco will be playing a character who is friends with the character that will be portrayed by his brother. Interesting little cycle there. And at the same time, something I'm very, just interested. There's an essence of bizarreness about it that I like, that appeals to me. This real essence of bizarreness about, one, the interview, and two, The Disaster Artist, that really gets me more excited for them. And Dave Franco and James Franco in the same film, not exactly playing brothers. This is an interesting pick, but some of the reactions are a little bit, far-fetched. Because, we've seen, let's say, Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor Johnson portraying husband and wife in Godzilla. They're going to be twin brother and sister in another film. Granted, they don't have any real relationship in that sense. But still, I don't see why that should be the prime cause for concern or the thing on everyone's mind. The next bit of news that we have is about Avatar 2, 3, and 4. And it's a very small bit of news. I've been meaning to revisit Avatar for a while, but Sigourney Weaver is supposed to star in the film. Now, spoiler alert for the original Avatar, but her character doesn't exactly make it. So I'm assuming that while James Cameron is undertaking certain experimental things in terms of the making of this film, I'm trying to wonder where they're going. Will Sigourney Weaver play the same character, a clone of the character, or is she going to be someone entirely different? It should, I'm sure James Cameron's going to make it work, but it shouldn't come across as jarring in terms of the continuity of the universe, of course. And this is really being brought about by the fact that I'm sure there is a story element that they want to deliver, but James Cameron also said the following, that, he has a long working relationship with Sigourney Weaver. So seeing them team up again, it's definitely intriguing and something I'm looking forward to seeing. Now, the next bit of news is in fact with regards to a question that had been sent in, the first ever question. And once again, I encourage each and every one of you to send in as many questions as possible. I will answer them to the best of my ability. And the first ever question on This Week in Movies comes in from Tevya Smolka, another great reviewer. That's Tevya space Smolka. Check him out, subscribe to him. I really adore him. And he comments by saying, "Great podcast," and asks for questions. "I'm just wondering, what is your opinion of Terminator Genisys? Because in my opinion, I'm 50-50 on that movie. Because frankly, I don't want another unnecessary remake or reboot unless it's done right, like X-Men Days of Future Past did, in my opinion. Anyways, great podcast, and I hope you have a good day, and take care, man." Thank you so much, Tevya. And I gotta say that, let me be very frank that only recently, I've only really revisited the original Terminator recently. I've been meaning to go through the franchise again, so it really leaves an impression in my mind. But the original Terminator was a film that I saw. I loved the ending of that film, one of the best endings in film ever, and I really enjoyed the film as well. So from whatever we know about Terminator Genisys with regards to the return of Arnold Schwarzenegger, with regards to where they're going to be taking the plot, sure. It's interesting. Why not? In my personal opinion, while, yeah, I do feel that, okay, they don't have to make that. There are a lot of films that don't necessarily have to be made, but they end up satisfying a lot. I would never say, oh, do not by any means make that film or anything like that, especially, if it's in relation to a big and successful franchise, but at the same time, I can have apprehensions, and let's be honest, I'm not too apprehensive about this film. I'm pretty excited looking at the cast and everything. I mean, um, the director himself is Alan Taylor. All right, Alan Taylor made Thor: The Dark World, a film that was a whole lot of fun, a film that I really enjoyed last year. And the cast consists not only of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but Emilia Clarke, Jason Clarke, a fantastic actor, and Jay Courtney, and a lot of other people, J.K. Simmons. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to in this film already. And I mean, when it comes to any film for that matter, you know, there is potential to be great. So why not see whether one is able to exhaust such potential and really provide something stunning, stellar, and just spectacular, whether it's a sequel, reboot, or an original film. Speaking of sequels, the box office really did not surprise some, but I mean, in terms of the positions, I was a bit shocked myself, but let's really delve into it for a moment. We had 22 Jump Street taking the box office. Absolutely taking the box office. It I haven't seen it. The reviews are great. And 57 million on opening weekend, currently about 77 million worldwide. Not bad opening numbers, especially for an R-rated comedy, beating out How to Train Your Dragon 2, which opened to $49 million on opening weekend. And really, I enjoyed the film a lot. I think it's an ample number. It's not a huge improvement over the original, unfortunately. And once again, worldwide, about 75 million so far. But if I were to look at these two films, I see worldwide How to Train Your Dragon 2 really outgrossing 22 Jump Street. I mean, from a predecessor perspective, you want to look at it that way. 21 Jump Street performed best in the US and, pretty well overseas, sure, for the kind of film that it is. How to Train Your Dragon, on the other hand, was an absolute, smasher, almost $500 million at the box office. So, by the end of its run, I see How to Train Your Dragon 2 grossing, let's say, $600+ million worldwide. And 22 Jump Street probably crossing the $250 million mark as well. It's been a fantastic weekend for film, according to most. So, I'm glad that the films are doing well and that they've earned so much. Like, for two films opening together, combined, over $100 million, it's a good number. It's definitely a good number to see. And to continue on, there were a couple of films that have been out for the past few weeks. And what came in at number 3 was, in fact, Maleficent. And this was a bit surprising to me at first, but I realized that, with Disney behind it, with everything that I've said before about the universal appeal, and the marketing that has, in fact, attracted a lot of people towards it, Maleficent has made 435 million worldwide, a number not so shocking, and a number that I think that is still going to grow. Furthermore, we had The Fault in Our Stars, 119 million worldwide, of which 80 million from the US so far, performing really well within America, not so much out overseas just as yet. Edge of Tomorrow was a film that a lot of people thought should have made more money. I still believe that it should have made a little bit more considering how much I enjoyed it. While it's only made close to $57 million domestically, it's done pretty well worldwide with $237 million so far, on its way to what I would call a healthy $300 million. And two comic book films that came out in the past are so close to being the highest grossing film worldwide of the year, while Captain America the Winter Soldier is on top with $710 million. We have X-Men Days of Future Past slowly creeping up with a whopping $662 million, over $200 million ahead of the second highest grossing X-Men film worldwide of all time. And The Amazing Spider-Man 2 made the $700 million mark. While I still think it will ultimately be one of the lowest grossing, if not the lowest grossing film of the franchise that it is a part of, that is Spider-Man. You can't complain with 700 million for the kind of reception that it had. The word of mouth has not been that positive, so 700 million is still a pretty incredible feat. I'm looking forward to the box office takes us next week, because the films coming out next week aren't particularly, big. We have two films coming out. The first is Jersey Boys, directed by Clint Eastwood. The reviews on it aren't so positive, unfortunately. Again, there aren't a lot of reviews on it, but whatever's come out so far has not given it the highest of praise. It's about, an old, I think, barbershop quartet, if I'm not mistaken, and it looks interesting. It's a film that I'm certainly looking forward to. And the next film is Think Like a Man 2, and again, these two films, there isn't an awful lot to comment on, because personally I believe that 22 Jump Street and How to Train Your Dragon 2 really are still going to storm the box office next weekend. Though Think Like a Man 2 has the potential to really win because of, Kevin Hart. It's based off, it's a sequel to the original. So it has a lot going for it in terms of a box office gross. And once again, no reviews have been released. And it feels like they kind of rushed the sequel out in a year. Unlike films like Dumb and Dumber 2, which took 20 years to finally get that sequel out. But still, Think Like a Man 2, it feels once again like a quick production, but still, I've been wrong about a lot of these films. About Last Night was a film that surprised me, to be honest. I really enjoyed it. So Think Like a Man 2 could potentially be a great and enjoyable film. Unfortunately, there aren't any reviews out just as yet. And finally, we are now talking about Blu-ray. I love talking about Blu-ray, and there's a lot this week on Blu-ray. There are a lot of things that I'm certainly looking forward to picking up sometime soon, and let's talk about a few things first, wherein, we have House of Cards Season 2 coming out on Blu-ray. If you're a House of Cards fan and you want to own it on Blu-ray, go ahead and do so. Then we have, for those Tosh.0 fans, he releases his DVDs and volumes based on the clothing he's wearing in each episode. So they're releasing collars and, exposed arms. This is what the edition is called. It's about 21 episodes. Looking forward to it. I mean, I don't think I'm going to buy the Blu-ray, though I do definitely watch and enjoy the show. But there are two Blu-rays in particular that you have no idea how excited I am about them. Honestly, they are two of my favorite films of the year so far. Coming out on the same weekend makes me all the more happy. The first is The Grand Budapest Hotel. Wes Anderson executed that film to perfection, to be honest. I loved it, and for any film aficionado, that is not a film to be missed, and that is a film you should pick up. And then the Lego Movie, coming out, in several different editions, in an Everything is Awesome edition, which has the 3D disc and a lot of cool things, including a small minifigure of Vesuvius, one of the characters in the film. The reviews in terms of the audio and picture quality have been great. Special features have been good so far. And I just have to say, for anyone who enjoys watching films at all, you don't even need to be an aficionado and know of the, let's say, the filmmaking style of earlier ages. For anyone with emotions, let's be honest, give the film a shot. I'm not going to guarantee you that you will be head over heels as I am, but give the film a shot. All right? I love to say that, and I believe that every film deserves that shot, however good or bad it might be. Though the Lego Movie, upon my recommendation, please check it out. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. It's been a pretty long episode. We're about 5 minutes or so short of an hour. Still really happy to keep doing this. Absolutely awesome. There was one other bit of news I didn't really have much to say about. Spielberg's next two film dates have been announced. He's making the BFG about Roald Dahl in 2016. It's based off one of his books, and also, to add to that, there's going to be the Cold War epic with the Coens that he's planning on making. That's going to be coming out, and with Tom Hanks, of course, that's going to be coming out sometime in 2015 in October itself. So expect an Oscar push because it's October, because it's Tom Hanks, because it's the Coen brothers, because it's Steven Spielberg. Frankly, though, I'm really enjoying doing this. It gets tough. to upload as many videos as I'd like to, weekly, but I try my best, and I'm really glad at the fact that you've listened in for so long, and you must have patience, but at the same time, you must enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm so eternally grateful to you. I hope to hit 600 subscribers soon, so be sure to share this channel, share the information about it, and lastly, ask any questions below with regards to anything related to film, past, present, or future. I'll be sure to answer it on next week's podcast, and until next time, this is Mr. Film Jack.